guys, this is Lucky with Lucky Sevens Tarot, and today I am gonna start a new series that I've really wanted to do for such a long time, and I hope you guys will enjoy I'm gonna call it Let's Get Personal. And I really want to talk about my personal experiences, especially as of lately, because I do feel like these experiences, one, could be very helpful for a lot of you, even if it's just on a surface level, to know that you're not the only one experiencing these things by yourself, or it's helpful to know that you can get through them, to have an understanding that it you're able to overcome it. And I'm going to draw from my own personal experiences, and hopefully you will be patient with me and join me on this, because I don't want to say I'm not used to opening up and talking about my personal experiences. Guys, I wrote a whole book about it, okay? Um, but it's more of me kind of being vulnerable, which is something that I'm not used to. And hopefully it will help you in your journey in some capacity. All right, that's my goal. So I want to talk to you guys today about trauma and trauma bonds and how they affect you. Trauma from an early age all the way up to to now and in your present moment, and the things that it causes you to become or do, um, and how it affects the everything else in your life. All right. And talk about maybe what you can do to circumvent these things from happening. Now, this series in no way will replace what I do on my channel, my tarot readings. I'll still be doing them. Um, but I do want to get a little personal and see how you guys feel about it. Please leave me comments and feedback. I would appreciate it to know your thoughts on this. Okay. So let's get into it. All right. Um, First of all, 2021, like I really thought that 2020 was crazy, right? It was hectic. It was a lot. Very heavy energy with COVID and, you know, our government in the United States and all of that. And damn near breaking into civil war. Like 2020 was crazy. But it was like, for me personally, 2021 so far has been like, yeah, you thought that was bad? Hold my beer and watch me work. Like, that is the experience that I have had for 2021. And for me personally, I live a very like boring life, right? I work a lot, and if I'm not working doing readings, I am working on my house or I am parenting, you know? So my life is really boring. And I've sort of made it that way intentionally and unintentionally at the same time. And I made it that way because I have experienced so much trauma in my life that I use those things to keep others at bay. Okay. And in 2021, I have a very small circle. Like, I know of people, or like have an association. I might speak to people. I mean, I'm just genuinely kind most of the time, or try to be. Um, but I have a small circle of people that like I trust and love, and they're a part of my team. And I have lost so many significant relationships in 2021. And it has it has been painful and kind of lonely this year. And normally, I mean, the type of relationships that I've lost would have put me into a severe, deep seated depression. But I've worked through a lot of my own trauma over the last few years, which has helped me to be able to acknowledge when I feel those types of ways, to where, I could get in bed and not get out of bed for a week, and now with a child, I don't have that. I don't even have that luxury to be depressed, to get into that kind of a depression, because kids require your attention, and somebody's got to take them to their activities and take them to school and things like that, like do homework and talk to them and all of that. So there's no time to be like, oh yeah, I need a week to lay in bed and cry and be sad. It, there's just no way that I can physically justify or do that. And then being in bed and being depressed and sad and not living and not doing my job and working, and that adds to the depression. You feel like this huge weight that's on your shoulders. So I don't have time for that. But the relationships that I've lost are like, these are huge relationships. My mother, relationships with three of my sisters, relationships with the one person in my life that I trust more than anyone. And I don't trust anyone. That's a huge problem in my life. That I don't trust people. And I have sort of built a bubble around myself to protect me from people, because I don't make friends easily. I don't open myself up a to have even relationships with family members that I love. Like, I still have a very, strong stiff arm when it comes to people that I genuinely love, and know that they wish the absolute best for me. And this trauma that I have experienced has put me in survival mode for my entire life. And so I realized that I have not been necessarily living, I've been surviving, and always looking at ways to survive, not ways to live, not ways to be happy or really enjoy the moment, but ways to how to see the room, to walk into a room and scan the room for the energy, to not to pick out the great energies and focus on that, but to pick out the ones that I need to stay away from, that forcing myself to protect myself from those people, and, that kind of situation. And it has caused me to isolate myself to the point of almost severe anxiety. Okay. And so I realized this a while ago, and I have been working on it for probably 6 or so months, maybe a year, um, really trying to open myself up more to letting other people in, and working on my own vulnerability with other individuals, and kind of trusting them with that. But the relationships that I've lost due to betrayal and other things have been so significant that it's forced me to take a really close look at these relationships that I've had and that I've carried that have been of value to me for so long. And looking at these relationships, I realized that there was something in me that was holding on so tight to these people in my life that it was hindering me from being myself, from my own growth and balance in my life, right? Because I've experienced trauma at such an early age, I grew up with a significant fear of abandonment, but also knowing what abandonment feels like, so never allowing anyone close enough to abandon me, but letting them in enough to the point that they were present and they, became a part of my life, but not enough to where I let myself enjoy them fully and let them know me fully, right? There's only one person that I can say that knows me inside and out. And that relationship has now come to a conclusion as well. And these significant relationships in my life that are now over, it wasn't that I just decided that, oh, they did something and I'm going to cut them off. That's not how this worked. It was at some point in my life, like we might have butted heads and got into it, and they may have said something that exposed a weakness in the relationship. It exposed a jealousy, or it exposed who how they really felt in some way, and or things that they were thinking about that weren't me, maybe to validate their argument or to make themselves feel better. I don't know. But every single time that this that we butted heads, and then we maybe didn't speak for a while, 6 months, 3 months, whatever, when we would come back together, it would be me reaching out, accepting an apology that I never received, saying, being, wanting to be the bigger person, wanting to be this person that I'm going to love you anyways. Like, I literally have this ride or die feeling and mentality with my family, like this close circle of friends and family that I have. And it became a point of acknowledging that I was people pleasing. I was doing everything for them, even sacrificing myself, my time, my knowledge or information, my money, my whatever they needed in that moment. I was that go-to person to assist them, to help them level up. But there was no real reciprocity in that relationship. And I would see that exposed at certain points. But then I would find myself making excuses for their behavior, making excuses as to why they did what they did to me, why they hurt me, why, you know, whatever. And it came to a point in my life where a couple years ago, like it really started, I want to say a few years ago, when I started to choose me. I started to choose myself first and stop over giving to relationships that I wasn't receiving a lot from. And that's really hard for me, guys, because when I love you, I am all the way out there. I will walk through fire for you. I will sacrifice myself for you when I am all the way out there. Like when you are a part of the circle that I have created. I am that friend, I am that daughter, I'm that sister, I'm that lover, I'm that wife, all those things, right? Um, but that being that type of person, and I'm not saying that I'm perfect. By no means am I perfect at all. I make mistakes all the time. And I apologize a lot. But it allowed me to really take a deep seated look at myself, especially this year. And I realized that because of the trauma that I experienced in my life, I have this hard, very hard exterior about myself. A lot of people, a lot of relationships that I've had in my life have suffered. And I mean, I've been told that, I'm more like a man than a woman. And a lot of that is because I have issues with being vulnerable. It's not that I don't feel emotion. I get sad, I cry, I get hurt, my feelings get hurt. And more easily than people would even think, right? Most people that know me probably have never seen me cry before. And if you had told them that I did, they'd be like, "What? Oh my God." Like it it would be a lot. And if they were to see me emotional or cry or, in that way, they would automatically be like, "Oh my goodness," because that's just not something I do, you know? And I've learned to become more comfortable with it recently, maybe within the last year. It's still very uncomfortable for me to show emotion in front of people. And that has to do with the trauma from growing up where you show emotion and it gets thrown back in your face and used against you. And so I learned at such an early age in my life that vulnerability was a weakness. And the only way to survive was to not be vulnerable with people. There's very few people I can count on that I can probably name them off and acknowledge every time that it happened where I have been vulnerable enough to expose a part of myself with that person. And I can tell you every single time that it came back to me to haunt me later on. So that betrayal has created this very stoic um, person that a lot of the outside world gets to see. And it's like I have busied myself with being the person that asks nobody for anything. I do not ask friends or family for help in any way. I have a favorite movie. One of my favorite movies, because I have several, but it's 28 Days, I think it's called, and it's with Sandra Bullock. And she is in this place, and she has this, they like put this sign on her chest, and it's like, if I don't ask for help, ask if I need help anyways, something like that. And there's even one on her back, like, I need help. I feel like I should walk around with like that sign around my neck, like, hey, I know that I look, you know like a bitch, or I know that I look um like I don't care, but I care so much. And my emotions are so deep. I feel things so deeply that they live within me forever, that I have to protect myself from that feeling because it can be so overwhelming. And I'm sure some of my empaths out there, if you're watching this, you can relate. And it's like, I realized that trauma bonds and trauma early in life creates insecurities within us. And trauma bonds and trauma relationships expose those insecurities that we have within us, expose the things that we have to work on in order to heal. You know, my lack of boundaries with the people that I love, because I love them so much, I was tiptoeing around their boundaries while they were jumping on top of mine. My boundaries were expendable, theirs were not. And I'm not claiming to be any type of victim in any way. I stand up for myself. I am as vulnerable, or like, um what's the word I'm looking for? Loving, I guess, kind I can be with the people that I love, or giving. I can equally, when I get to a boiling point, because there is this level of like very passiveness and like huge total aggression, and I can go from one to the other like that. And but it takes so long to get there. It takes so long for me to uh achieve that, to get fed up. And then, I have my black moon Lilith is in Cancer in my natal chart, and it's in the 7th house. So that by itself will tell you that I like bringing my family together and having, family time and all of that, right? But in committed relationships, the very first time that I feel betrayed, exposed, um, lied to, I have such a hard time forgiving. I It takes me so long to forgive, no matter what they do, to try to recover. I have a hard time forgiving betrayal in any form when it comes to love, like lovers, or friendships even. But when it comes to like my blood relatives who may do way worse things and have done way worse things to me, I will forgive and make excuses and try to make it right, because that's my blood, right? I'm supposed to do that. But the truth is that betrayal is betrayal. And just because a person has a title that I didn't choose to give them doesn't make it any less of a betrayal. Doesn't mean that they should get a pass for doing things that are painful. Doesn't mean that they shouldn't be treated in the same regard as anyone else. Doesn't mean that they should be easily forgiven. I advocate for forgiveness. I don't advocate for being a prisoner to your own loyalty. which I have become in over the course of my life and in these significant relationships that I have. And the truth is that the truth is that I learned over the last couple years to start setting real boundaries for myself. And the minute that I started setting these boundaries, these relationships began to change. Because there would be people that were outside looking in on these relationships that would be like, you give so much to this, but you don't get the same back. And I'd be like, oh no, like they've done this before or that before, and trying to paint the picture differently. But the picture is the picture, right? And when I started to see that I was giving and not getting from these relationships, and I was becoming the giving tree. And at some point, you've got to save yourself, because if you keep giving and giving and giving and no one is giving back to you, eventually you're not going to have anything to give. And that person is going to move on to the next person who's going to give to them. Meanwhile, you're left trying to deal with the fact that you don't have anything within yourself, even for you. And I think I got to that place, and I had to find a way to breathe again. I had to find a way to choose me again. And I don't even want to say again. For most of these relationships, for the first time, for the very first time in my life, a lot of my trauma caused me to hurt other people. Not that I blame anyone else for my actions. I am totally 100% responsible for the things that I do wrong, especially when they hurt or affect someone else. But I realized that by making excuses for other people's bad behavior and wanting to hold on to these people so tightly into my life, despite the fact that they were not also holding back, holding on to me as well. This was a fear of what my life would look like without them. This is a fear of change. And I'm a Capricorn sun sign, right? So stability and safety are the most pivotal and important things to me in my life. And it's funny because as a Cancer moon people generally grow up and have like a really harsh childhood, which I did. I totally live out the Cancer moon childhood scenario. And what I mean from that, like, I was abandoned at a very, very, like, toddler age in my life from my parents. I was in foster homes. I was in group homes. I was in detention homes and spent 2 years locked up during developmental years in my life. And not that I would change anything about my life, because I wouldn't. Knowing what I know, I feel like every single experience that I've ever had, good and bad, has helped me to be the woman that I am today. And I'm not perfect, and I go through things just like everyone else. Every tarot reader does. No tarot reader is perfect. If you think that, you're crazy. It's just like the celebrities. Like, celebrities are not perfect people. They go through things. They have human emotions. We're all humans, and we're all going to make mistakes, and we all have the evolution, our own personal evolution to go through, right? And I've definitely had mine, and still learn new things, deal with new situations all the time. And me having that Cancer, sort of moon does balance Capricorn and Cancer. You're literally talking about Saturn and the moon, right? So the father and the mother energy. This is literally yin and yang, the balance of that energy. Um, so thankfully, I have the Cancer moon because then it balances the energy of my stoicness when it comes to how I deal with people on an everyday basis. Like, I am genuinely working on not pushing people away, wanting to open myself up for the first time in my whole life to new friendships, new relationships, like family, creating my own family. And I was starting this around, I want to say like November, December time, 2020. And I thought that I was trying to like rebuild these very significant relationships and maybe venture out to add more to it. But and I already knew, guys, like I knew that this was going to be a tough year for me personally, on a personal level, just by looking at my cardology report. Like, I have a 9 of spades in Pluto, which is insane. Um, and I've got a 9 of clubs in my long range position, which all talks about things ending, personal relationships, personal things in your life ending. Um, so I knew that it was going to be a tough year emotionally, but I could not have imagined that it was going to be this tough, you know. And I definitely I have hurt. I am hurting from the loss of these relationships. But I also know that I have to develop a level of unattachment or non-attachment to people and things in my life, okay? Because trying to hold on to the wrong people, the wrong things, is only hurting me in the long run. It's prolonging my own evolution. It's prolonging my own, me from having that joy and that real excitement about life. Not that these people are not great people. I love each one of them individually, and I wish them so much happiness and so much greatness. And it makes me sad that I won't be a part of their life to see it and witness it and be there with them, you know, because I was planning on it. Um, but it makes me happy to know that I did try. Capricorns do not generally give up easily. We will hold on. We want to make sure that by the time we walk away from something, that we've exhausted every opportunity to fix it, to mend it, to make it work, because we don't give up easily. Why? Because you don't get in easily either. And that's where I've been with these relationships for most of my life. And a lot of that comes from it being a trauma bond. These relationships, I realize, are, for some of them, I was born into this world with these people that were meant to guide me and uplift me and support me. And those expectations went unmet. And there was trauma created, and then it just snowballed into a bigger trauma and a bigger trauma and a bigger trauma, to where now we are bonded by the trauma that we have experienced. And, one hand washing the other. Now you've created all this trauma for me, so I'm creating trauma for you. And then here we are, we're just this big relationship of trauma. That becomes what we're known for. That becomes our identity in the relationship that we have together. And then the trauma that you've experienced from me and that you feel like you've had, you teach that same type of relationship to other people. And when I say you, I'm starting off like, okay, so my mother, the relationship to my mother. And then that type of relationship was taught, and the way that she treated me was taught to my sisters, that this is okay and this is the way that it should be. And then they start to act that out as they get older in their own lives. And then it becomes like the the popular kids over here, and then this other person that's ostracized and kind of left out and picked at and whatever over here, kind of like some Cinderella sort of situation. And but that is the effect of trauma, right? And then you've got the relationships that you have, that you maybe get older and you meet new people and they become a part of your circle because you guys share trauma together. Like you've experienced some of the same trauma, so you can relate to each other and you grow a love or a bond with one another. But neither one of you really learned how to love in a healthy way. So you take that trauma that taught you what love was and you bring it into the relationship. And now the relationship that you, sorry guys, now the relationship that you have is where you're actually hurting each other because no one taught you that love does not mean pain, that love doesn't equal pain. So you go through this cycle with these other relationships that you bring in because of shared experiences, and then you end up hurting each other. And you keep hurting each other. You maybe, for as long as you allow that to go on and no one corrects the behavior. You have one person that maybe is super dominant and the other one that's more docile, and sort of compete. It becomes more of a competition in the relationship, you know um and then you start to expose jealousies, you start to expose insecurities, and acting out of insecurities and jealousies within the dynamic, because that is what you were taught through your own trauma experiences. And then you put this wall up and they put their wall up, but neither you guys want to remain close, and neither one is letting go of the trauma or working on being better and not acting out their trauma with this relationship, learning new ways to build together, new ways to love each other, new ways to heal, right? New ways to communicate. And so then you just end up going from having this beautiful love that is joyful and gives you a feeling of happiness, right? With that person, whoever it may be, to hating each other, to being resentful, to being angry with each other all the time. And you see that in a lot of unhappy relationships because, where they argue and they fight and you see that in a lot of friendships where people are so-called quote unquote friends, But the only real thing that they have in common is the fact that they both don't like the same person, right? That is a trauma bond. That's a trauma bond. When you bond with someone over something negative, and then you try to build on that, but it doesn't have building blocks. There's no foundation in it. And then you start to go at it with each other, and then you end up like being strangers to people who were once the most important thing in the world to you. And it's very hard to let go of what used to be and what was, and who, the potential of your relationship and the potential that you could have with this beautiful human being, but you just hurt each other. And no one wants to back down. No one wants to be the one to just say, can we just start new? Can we just come from a place of love and start fresh and forget the past and move forward and not complicate the relationship and agree to start here? Because, well, what if I'm the only one who wants that? And what if this person starts to, just think that I am giving in, and then ego comes into play, right? And stubbornness. And like I said, where resentment lives, nothing else can grow. It is like a weed in a flower bed. It will suck everything else up to the point where the beautiful flowers that were there end up dying because the weed overgrows everything else. That is what resentment does. That is what trauma does when you haven't learned to heal and learn new ways of communicating, new ways of loving each other, healthy ways of loving somebody, healthy ways of speaking to one another, learning to speak life into one another, supporting each other, not being in competition with each other, not being so easy to cut each other off just because of a petty argument. Oh, it's easier to just be the one to say, oh, I'm done with that person. And I know it sounds like that's what I'm doing here with these relationships, but that is not it at all. I have tried hundreds and always am the first one to want to make the change, to extend myself, extend the olive branch, and overlook my pride. Put my hand out there and it's slapped every time in some way, shape, or form. Maybe not immediately, but eventually. And that all that does is chip away a little bit at a time. Every time that happens, every time there's a betrayal, every time there's a lie, every time there's gossip or whatever, and you can't approach each other like adults and sit and acknowledge your wrongdoing and acknowledge the other person's feelings and validate that emotion the way that it's supposed to be validated, you end up being, you come back together and just push it under that rug. My whole book is called Under the Rug, The Unforgettable Forgotten. And I wrote this book to release the rug, to lift the rug from all the dirt and clean out underneath it. So this is one of those situations that we really need to put a lot more effort into, Because, and I'm not saying this just for you or whatever, like even myself, I realized that my lack of vulnerability because of always living in survival mode when it comes to other people has hardened my exterior and creates loneliness. It isolates me from people that I love, from people that I care about, who care about me. It has been a survival tactic that I've had for all these years, but has done more harm than good to a degree. Mostly because the relationships that I value, um, I'm talking about love, like romantic relationships. The relationships that I valued, I was not able to keep them together. And I wasn't able to keep them together because the minute that they did something wrong, here my family would do something way worse. But the minute they did something wrong, the betrayal was so significant in my, for me, and it felt so familiar from my childhood that that wall went immediately up and they were on the outside. And now here we are trying to talk through a plate of glass, with rabbit pit bulls in front of it. Like, no, it's not going to work. It's not going to work. The minute that wall went up, the relationship was over. Even if we continued on, because a person can only deal with so much of being pushed away before they really do walk away. And that's just facts of life, right? And then it feels like more trauma. Like, why didn't they work harder for me? Why didn't they do this or try this? They didn't exhaust every option that could have had. They didn't work as hard as I would have. But you got to understand, everybody's not you. I had to make peace with the fact that everybody isn't me. Some people have boundaries, better boundaries than I had. Some people are not people pleasers. Some people don't have abandonment issues like I have, right? So they're going to be different. They're going to express themselves differently. They're going to deal with our relationship in a different way. And I think that it took me to really take a deep look into these relationships that I've lost in such a small amount of time, even though most of them have been like hanging on by a thread for years. To really look at them and see the thread that was there. And I was the one who created the thread. I was the one holding it, everything, for most of these relationships. And realizing like, wow, I am part of the problem. Me. It's hard to take a look in the mirror and acknowledge when you are part of your own pain. When you create the pain that you are feeling inside from the loss of someone you love, even though they aren't dead, or you create the betrayal, you contribute to the betrayal because that person showed you who they were 15 times ago and you still forgave. You still let them come back like they were a new person or something. You I feel like I had to come to like an aha moment and say, wow, wait a minute, what's going on? Like, what are you doing to contribute to this? And I do see, I'm going through a whole evolution in my life where things are really changing. And it's kind of, it takes my breath away and maybe even gives me a little anxiety or panic attack because it's like, wow, they're changing so fast. And the thing about change it is, it makes you feel unsafe, because change is different. It's a new experience. And I'm I don't like to feel unsafe. No one really does. We all want security in our relationships. We want to feel safe with the people that we trust. We want to trust people, right? And I think one of the hardest things for me to do is trust other people. I have an aunt who I love her dearly. She is the kindest, sweetest soul. And she don't take no stuff either. Like she's about her business, but will literally give you the shirt off her back. And when I tell you she loves me to death, she does. I know for a fact she does. And she doesn't have to because not all my aunts do, not all my uncles do, believe it. But she loves me, but I keep her at bay because I know the capacity of her love and I can feel it because I definitely feel how strong she loves. But because I know the capacity of her love, I intentionally, like, I call and I check on her sometimes. And, every very blue moon we spend time together, I don't love her any less. But because I know that I could love her so much more and give her so much of myself, and that scares the shit out of me, I don't. I intentionally will see her, spend time with her. You know, she was in the hospital a while ago, a couple years ago, and she is sick. That's another issue, right? So I open myself up and I really am vulnerable and I give all of myself, all of the love that I have inside of myself to this other person who equally would do the same. But then something happens to her. And these are the things that that are traumatic for me. Like some of you guys know, some of you don't. My first love, the first love of my life, passed away. And I've also lost a child. And so the pain and loss and experience of that when it comes to death has created the trauma of this person being sick. And what if, you know, how devastating would that be? It took me 10 years to make peace with the losses of those individuals that have passed away that I was that connected to, right? So what if I open myself up to something different? These are the fears that someone that has been through so many traumatic experiences has when it comes to being vulnerable with other people, including family, including friendships, including relationships, you know? Um, and I'm acknowledging a lot of those fears now. I'm acknowledging the place of where it comes from and trying to pick it apart because if I can see where it comes from and acknowledge the trigger the things that trigger these emotions and, these feelings that I have, then I can fix them, right? And like I said, a lot of it I acknowledge. There's still things, like I said, I'm not perfect. There's still things that I have deep rooted issues in. Even things, it's funny because a part of the evolution of being a human or our human evolution is when you think you've healed from something and then you have something trigger it, and all these feelings and emotions that you didn't even think you had anymore come back up, and you're like, where the hell did that come from? Like, oh my God, I didn't even know I was still dealing with this. And then you got to work through that. And that happens all the time. I feel like we've got to break the cycle of trauma. And how we do that is by exposing it, is by acknowledging it and treating it like cancer inside of us. And the only way to do that is to focus fully on the healing process. Make sure that you are dealing with people in your life in a way that makes you feel good, in a way that, like you're communicating with them, telling them how you feel, allowing them to tell you how they feel, validating their feelings, them allowing you to speak and validating that you have, the right to feel how you feel, and not diminishing one person's experience over the other. That's a healthy in any relationship, because nobody's perfect, and neither one of you, and I don't care if it's a romantic, family, friendship, whatever, right? If you can agree to change and work on it, instead of getting stuck and being stubborn in your ego and in what was done to me, and you did this to me, and I, you know, when it becomes more about self and you, and not about each other, and cultivating, growing, and supporting and protecting your relationship. And I'm not just talking about love, like romantic love. That is in any relationship. You have to protect it. You have to have support in it. You have to feel support from both sides. Relationships are never one-sided. And anybody who tells you, oh, well, sometimes they are one-sided. You're right. Sometimes they are one-sided. And when it's one-sided, that's when you start to get resentful. Hopefully that person comes back around and starts giving their portion or their half in enough time to heal the resentment before it gets out of control, to kill that weed before it kills the whole flower or all the flowers in the flower bed. It is one of those things that is literally deadly if two people are not equally yoked in the relationship. The minute one person stops giving more than the other, the relationship falls out of balance. And then the resentment grows. We have to learn how to give beyond ourselves and stay equally yoked in our relationships, and to give without jealousy, to love without fear, to see others, to support others winning and being successful in their lives and being happy, and promote that, rather than pointing the finger or looking at them like, why are they, we've gone through the same trauma and they look like they're dealing with it so much better. Everybody deals with their shit differently. And that is the fact. I've watched people pass away, and some people cry about it, and some people, they look stoic. They look fine. It doesn't mean that that person is hurting any less than the person over here. It's just how they're dealing. It's how they're choosing to let the world see them in that moment. That does not mean that there is any less pain. I am the master of the stoic face, the resting bitch face. And being emotionally like feeling like I'm dying on the inside. I have mastered the art, okay? And we've got to learn how to create healthy boundaries with people, even our parents, even our siblings, even our family, grandparents, whatever. There has to be healthy boundaries. Things that you say, okay, I don't like this. Please don't do that. It makes me feel this way. And that person saying, man, I'm sorry, I didn't know. And I know that that sounds insane to think that I could never talk like that to my mom or have that type of relationship. You can have whatever type of relationship you manifest in your life, but you've got to be the one to cultivate it. You've got to be the one to start setting those boundaries. Unfortunately, I did start setting certain boundaries with people that I love, and I lost out on those relationships. But a sacrifice for myself, for my happiness, for my peace of mind, for my heart is it really a sacrifice if they didn't fight for it too? If they didn't give me the respect, the honesty, if they didn't give me the love that I gave out, did I really lose anything? Because I don't think so. I think I'm gaining. I lost them, but I'm gaining myself. And that's what you need to be focused on, not the fear of change or the fear of losing them. Yes, it hurts. It is so painful. Like, I'm not sleeping, and it's not that it's just that I haven't been able to sleep, you know, because it feels like a knife in the chest. But I know that it's for the right reason. And because of that, I've made peace with the decision. I have made peace with where I am, and in turn have learned to choose me first, to choose my self-respect over someone that chooses not to give it to me. I'm no longer accepting apologies that aren't being said anymore. I've done that a lot. I've accepted so many apologies that nobody ever told me they were sorry for. I just made those excuses for them. And that was me. That was my bad. That was my trauma. Now it's time to fix that. All right, guys. I hope that this was helpful for you in some way. I hope that either you can relate to it. Just like I said, know that you are not alone in this experience. I would love for anyone who has already experienced this and has completed their whole breakthrough and everything, and you're already out of, the woods, please comment down below. I would love to hear the stories about the other side. And if you're still going through this, even if you're at the beginning stages of just knowing that, you are a people pleaser, or that you have fear of letting go of people who are disrespectful to you, or people that hurt you consistently without, giving back to you, or reciprocating the energy that you're giving. If you've had severe unmet expectations, whatever, in your relationships in life, I don't care what kind of relationships they are, comment below. Let me know. I would love for you guys to share your experiences with me. And if you've made it to the end of this video, please comment #HealingTrauma in the comment section down below. I'm going to choose a winner from this video in the comment section for something nice. All right. So if you've made it to this far, which I hope you have, I hope that you are or will consider subscribing to my channel. And I hope to do more of these depending on the feedback that I get from it. I hope that you'll like this video and share it with your friends or family. And, you know, take care of you guys. Take care of you, yourself. All right. Remember, you can't give something that you don't have. And I hope you're loving on yourself. All right. I'm definitely going to be doing a lot of that for myself. I need it. All right. And I know it might seem like I'm super down or my energy is low. If you're an empath, you feel me right now. And it kind of is. I'm going to get some pep in my step. I'm going to take a break and I'm going to meditate and I'm going to burn my Palo Santo and get myself zen, and then I'm going to come back and get readings together. All right, guys. I want to be in a good place mentally and emotionally and make sure that no personal energy is in the readings that I do. You guys know I'm so like big on that. All right. I love you. I hope you're loving on yourselves. Peace, love, and blessings to you always. Until next time. Bye-bye.